halfway house, like a portal, like a doorway into the jhana. When you actually get into that jhana, you're really blissed out. And the best experience you could ever have. What's that got to do with insight? I'll tell you what it has to do with insight. When you come out from those powerful, deep experiences, which I was talking about last night, you can never forget those. They are such strong experiences. In my little book, I describe them like traumas. Like if you've had a bad experience, like being abused, have an accident, some terrible disease, you can never forget that pain because it's so intense. Now this is like a trauma, these jhanas, but with the opposite sense, they're entirely positive. But they are so strong, they leave an imprint in your mind which you can never forget. But a positive imprint. Which is why that when you come out of those jhanas, it's almost impossible not to look back and say, what was that? And also, why was that? What happened and why? Why was that the most wonderful experience? Also, because you want to get back there again, so you want to find out how to get back in there. When you come out and you look at them, you find some amazing insights. You understand, as I was saying yesterday, why the Buddha said that this body is suffering. There's not so much attachment to this body as suffering. Attachment stops your experience of jhanas. But it's the body itself and the five senses is dukkha. Sometimes when I say that, people say, how can you say that? Have you never seen a beautiful sunset over the ocean? Have you never seen your first child being born? Have you never felt the bliss of falling in love? I'm a monk. Somebody once asked me, did you become a monk because you had a relationship with a girl which didn't work out? Did you become a monk to forget? I said, no, I didn't. That's not the reason I became a monk. See? You've forgotten. Come on, think about it. Did you become a monk to forget? I said, no. Because I said no, it's obvious. I have forgotten. Okay, I'll leave you with that one. That's a Zen koan. You have to think about that for another day or two before you get the joke. But even like seeing or hearing like a marvelous symphony, all of that, everything which you think is the most wonderful pleasure and the delightful thing in this world, the bliss of jhana exceeds all of that. That's why, in comparison to the happiness when the body and all the five senses disappear, in comparison, all of the happinesses and pleasures of these five senses are suffering. When you know something more, when you know something better, you can never be entranced, even by the most beautiful flower in the garden. Because you know there's something more, something deeper more. Once upon a time, there was a little tadpole who lived in his pond. And one day the people told him, or rather the frogs in the pond told him, about the wonders of dry land. This little tadpole did not know what they were talking about. He said, what do you mean, dry land? And he said, in dry land, so there's no fish. In dry land, there's no reeds. In fact, every description of dry land was always, it's not this, it's not that. And so the little tadpole thought, there can't be such a thing as dry land. It's all just speculation. It's all just fantasy. There's no such thing, because I can't feel it. I can't experience it. In just the same way, some people think, Nibbana doesn't exist. Because when you ask the monks, what is Nibbana? They say the deathless, the unconditioned, the emptiness, not this, not that. They think, what are you talking about? That's a lot of old rubbish. It's like when I was a young boy. When I started getting interested in religion, when I started getting interested in spirituality, I used to ask the priest, the Christian priest in my school, what is this God business anyway? What is God? And they answered me like God is ineffable. Like God is, you can't sort of the nameless, that which is beyond all things, that which is beyond all things, like unconditioned. You can't give it a name. Beyond cause. And I thought, they don't know what they're talking about. If they can't give me a proper description of what God is, I thought such a thing doesn't exist. So that's one of the reasons why I gave up Christianity. I didn't believe them. They were all just saying what it was not. They could never tell me what it was. Trouble was, then I started getting into Buddhism. Then I asked my first monk, well, what's this Nibbana business? What's Nibbana? And they said, ineffable, beyond words, emptiness. And I said, I've heard that somewhere before. A lot of the monks don't know what they're talking about. Neither do you. But it's just like that tadpole. If you haven't left the lake, dry land, you don't know what you're talking about. And you can't describe it, you can't know it. You can actually philosophize about it. Tadpoles in the pond can write PhD theses about dry land. But it's all a lot of bunkum. But what happens is one day the little tadpole grows legs. And with those 4 legs, it actually climbs out of the pond. When it climbs out of the pond for the first time, it's still got some water on its back, but it can experience dry land. This is what dry land is. And the little tadpole, now a frog, gets an insight. The experience of what dry land is. An insight which it can never get as long as it's always been in the water. If you've been born in the water, grown up in the water, actually you don't even know what water is. You've got nothing to compare it with. Now, do you get the simile? You are like little tadpoles. You were born in this body, in these 5 senses. You've grown up with this body and 5 senses. You spent all your life in this body and 5 senses. So how can you really know what this body and 5 senses truly are? No more than a tadpole can know what water is. When someone talks about dry land, you think it can't exist. But there comes a time when I trick you, or the Buddha tricks you, deceives you into letting go of all of this, and you move out of your body, out of the 5 senses, into the world of the jhana. That's what they mean. Now you know that the body is dukkha. Before that, I say that the body is dukkha. Say, come on, Ajahn Brahm, you're just a dry old stick of a monk. You should go and get a relationship and get your emotional world alive. You've never had an affair. You don't know the joys of life. You haven't had any children. You should get a life. And I said, you don't know the joys of jhana. You should get a death. But when you understand these things, you have got what we call more data to work with. You have got more experience. And this is what happens when you get the experience of those deep states of meditation, which is so different than whatever you've seen before. The body has gone. Your senses are no longer there. You're in a blissful state with its just pure mind. That is going to change your perception of things. You know what the Buddha was talking about when he talked about samadhi, and how that samadhi is the path. Asamadhi, no samadhi, is the wrong path. That's in the Anguttara Nikaya, the 3s. You understand what's going on here because you have an experience which will change your life. The best bliss you've ever had. Now you know what happiness is. Now you know why people become monks and nuns. It's not a tough life, it's a blissful life. We don't do this because we're scared of relationships. We do this because we're into the bliss of jhanas. We're not negative, completely positive. A higher happiness, not abandoning happiness. And also you get these incredible insights into what the nature of things is. When you understand just the bliss of jhanas is much more delightful, how ever you're going to be attached to the things of the world anymore? Why would you trade a beautiful pleasure for a lesser pleasure. You can't do it. And also you understand what suffering is. I was very careful when I gave the simile of the tadpole, because the tadpole, when it grows into a frog, is still carrying some water on top of its back when it goes out into dry land. The person who's into jhana, they haven't let go of samsara completely yet. They're still carrying a little bit on their backs, but they have enough of a new experience to know what dry land is, to know what nibbana is, when all things cease. More than that, in these deep jhanas, you have other beautiful, amazing experiences. One of the other things, you look back upon that experience, is not only bliss and ending of suffering. Actually, the Buddha called the happiness of those jhanas, he called it sambodhi sukha. And when I first read that, I stopped and thought, my goodness, I know what that means. Sambodhi means enlightenment. He called enlightenment, he called the jhana, even the first jhana happiness, enlightenment bliss. And I know from a fact, and I know from the sutras, it's not enlightenment, but the point was, it's so close to enlightenment, the Buddha actually gave it that term, the bliss of enlightenment. So if you want to know what enlightenment feels like, I'm not talking about just all this, it's not this, it's not that. Not like this of the Christian priests or the monks I first knew, who were just making it up as they went along. This is actually your experience. You know Sambodhi Sukha. You've been there, you've felt it, you've known it. You know enlightenment happiness, as described by the Buddha. You're getting an idea what Nibbana is. And why in the text the Buddha said, Nibbana paramang sukhang, Nirvana is the highest happiness. It's very clear what that is now, because you've got that experience. I've already mentioned yesterday that there's terms like the pabhasara citta, the radiant mind. You've been to that radiant mind. You know that mind. Those nimittas are radiant. Many of you in the interviews have come up and say you've got that nimitta, you've seen it, and it is so brilliant, so bright, you think you're being blinded. For those of you who've said that, you'll come across a phrase in the sutras. Many monks talk about this, the pabhasara citta, the radiant mind. Now you can say, yeah, I know what that means, because I've seen it. Now I understand what insight is. It's experience-based. You've got the data. You see all these words. You made that connection. That's what it means. More than that, though, when you get into a second jhana, I mentioned this yesterday, one of the salient features of those second jhanas is you're absolutely still. Now, when I talk about absolutely still, I really mean absolutely. You can't be more still than in the second jhana. As far as stillness goes, second, third, fourth jhana, all the other jhanas are exactly the same in their degree of stillness. You are immovable, like a rock, like a diamond. Now the point is, in that state, it's very strange to be still. Because you notice when you come out afterwards, my goodness, that was so still. What was missing? There's something in your ordinary experience which is no longer there. Just like the frog, first time out of the pond, there's something which was always was around it, called water, is no longer there. What happens for the frog is that what's missing is the water. For second jhana, what's missing is something we call the will. You. So often we think we are the one in control. We are the driver. I am the one who decided to come here tonight. I am the one who decides to scratch my neck. I am the one who you scratch your neck as well. I am the one who decided to put the hand in front of the mouth. I am the one who decided to say this. Are you the one in control? Are you the will? If you are, what happens to you when you're in second jhana? Because that is completely gone. There is no will left. Even the potential to do is completely absent. This is the best I can describe it until you get there yourself. you will understand what I mean. The potential to do, when it disappears, you never experienced that in your life before. A completely new experience for you. Even now, you may not decide to do anything, but you're always in charge there. If you want to leave, you can leave at any time. If you want to move your hand, you can do it any time. If you want to think, you can think. You really assume you're in complete control. That potential to do is so close to the illusion of self, to what you take yourself to be, that it's scary when that disappears. In fact, one of the things which we protect is our independence. And what does independence mean? Our independence to do what we want. At least to think what we want. Which is why that most people are so scared that someone is going to take over your mind and control you. Now, when you understand that's not you at all, it's a completely different understanding. Will is such an important part of you. That's half, and a major half, of the illusion of a self. When the Buddha said there's no self, there's no one in here. This is what you experience in these deep states. That which you took to be yourself has now disappeared. It's gone. You realize it can't be you. The will can't be a self. There's still awareness there. Strong awareness without any will. There's an old saying. I saw this scrawled as graffiti on the walls of the philosophy department in Cambridge University when I was a student. First of all, it quoted the 17th century French philosopher René Descartes, who said, to be is to do. Doing is like will. He made the connection between the will and actually being. If you don't do anything, that's a sign you're dead. That's how they find out if you're dead. They poke you and see if you do something back. That's why we say a thing is inanimate. If it doesn't do anything, it just sits there. Is your stool, is that alive or is it dead? It's not doing anything, therefore it must be dead. That's why he's saying to be is to do. The will which moves you is a sign of life, of being. To be is to do, said René Descartes. But underneath that was scrawled another French philosopher, more modern, Jean-Paul Sartre, who turned it around. Instead of saying to be is to do, he wrote, no, to do is to be. Through will, you actualize your being. And that's why we have our identity in what we do in life. Who are you? I'm a monk. What does that mean? I do monk business. What are you? I'm an engineer. What does that mean, an engineer? I do engineering. You define yourself by your activity, by your will. So Jean-Paul Sartre turned it around and said, no, it's not to be is to do. He said to do is to be. And underneath all of that was a famous American philosopher who summed it all up. He was saying, to do is to be, that's wrong. To be is to do, that's also wrong. The American philosopher said, doobie doobie do, and that was Frank Sinatra. And that was actually written on the philosophy walls of Cambridge when I was there. And every time I get serious with deep Dhamma, I also have to make a joke to keep people awake and alert. But it's true, in that jhana, the doer disappears. There's no one there. That changes a lot of your life. You've got a great insight there into anatta. That's often enough to get you enlightened. There's no one in there. My goodness, if there's no one in there, where can craving be? You've all heard the Buddha teaching about non-self and emptiness. Now you're actually seeing that emptiness. It's not a word anymore. It's an experience. What about impermanence? Sometimes people don't know how impermanent impermanence is. Sometimes these experiences of deep meditation, they just shock you. Sometimes it's like watching your TV set. Imagine there was a TV set with 6 channels on. The 6 channels of sight channel. Channel 2 is hearing. Channel 3 is smelling. Channel 4 is tasting.